I should have known the second she laughed. It was a soft, hollow sound. She made it often, like a habit she wore thin. That laugh had no warmth, no real mirth. I had told her once that I could hear the difference between laughter that came from a place of genuine joy and laughter that came from someone feigning contentment. Her eyes didn't match her smile. They never did. That evening the laugh felt different, like a crack in the facade, barely noticeable, but still a crack. I told her I didn't want to go to dinner. I was tired. I was going to stay in. She only smiled at me, that empty smile, and said, "Suit yourself." It wasn't the words, it was the way she said them, a little too quick, a little too dismissive, and that laugh, it lingered. I didn't go to dinner. I watched her leave. I knew something had shifted. The silence that followed felt too heavy, too final, the kind of silence that only happens when something's already been broken and no one's willing to fix it. A week passed before I saw it, the phone call that wouldn't end. She'd been acting strangely, out of character, not in her usual way, not even pretending to be interested in me. When she thought I wasn't paying attention, her eyes would drift, her words would lose weight, but she never looked at me the same way again. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to pretend it was nothing. I even told myself it was just a phase. But then, the phone call. She never let me see who was calling. Her back was turned to me, her hand pressing the phone to her ear, her face tight, tense, too careful. But I could hear her voice, just enough to know she was speaking to someone who wasn't me. It wasn't the words, it was the way she said them. Soft, coaxing almost, affectionate. A part of me wanted to believe she was simply keeping secrets, harmless secrets. But another part of me, the one that had always kept watch, knew better. I spent the next week watching her like a hawk, quietly. She thought she was in control, and that's exactly why I needed to remain still, observant, detached. The first clue was the subtle changes, little things she no longer bothered to hide. Her perfume lingered longer on the sheets, and the marks on her neck were more visible than they had been before, the kind of marks I hadn't put there. Her texts always seemed to disappear the second she finished typing, but it wasn't until I checked her phone records that the world tilted sideways. There it was, the number, the one that had called so many times at all hours of the day. I had half expected the name to be a dead end, just another number in the chaos of her life. But no, it was a name I knew. A name I trusted, a name I had shaken hands with a year ago. The pieces clicked into place, sharp and brutal. That laugh, that hollow laugh. It wasn't just a mask, it was the beginning of something more dangerous. She'd been playing a game, and I'd only just started to realize the rules. I didn't confront her. No, I wasn't going to play her game. I'd learned a long time ago that people like her needed confrontation to feel like they still had control. She was controlling, manipulative, always so sure of herself, so certain that the world would bend to her whims. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I did what I do best. I kept quiet. I watched. I waited. She went about her days, her life, as though nothing had changed. She didn't see the cracks forming under her feet. She didn't feel the weight of the noose tightening around her neck. The evidence, the undeniable proof, wasn't something I needed her to see right away. I knew her. I knew that she would try to lie, try to spin the truth. No, I needed her to expose herself, to break open under the pressure. So, I waited. I followed her, quietly, without her noticing. I slipped into the shadows and watched her smile a little too brightly at the man who had once called me a friend. She thought no one was looking, but I was always looking. And when she came home that night, her smile didn't reach her eyes. She knew I knew, but she didn't say anything. She didn't ask any questions. It was coming. I could feel it. The moment when she realized I wasn't just going to sit there, waiting for her to reveal herself. No, I was taking control. The control she'd once thought she had over me. The truth came to me quietly, like a whisper in a crowded room. I didn't need her to admit it. I didn't need her to beg for forgiveness. I had everything I needed. The report, the timestamps, the evidence. I could see the full picture now. She didn't know I had it all. It wasn't about what she did anymore. It was about how I would make her see it. I stood in front of her that night, the silence thick between us. She didn't even look at me when I handed her the folder, the one that held the cold, undeniable truth. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. She scanned the pages, her face losing color with each passing second. Finally, she looked up at me, eyes wide. You don't—" Her voice broke, and I saw the cracks appear in her once perfect mask. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I watched her eyes, watched her fall apart in front of me, piece by piece. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She tried to speak, tried to find some excuse, some explanation, but there was nothing left. She was broken. And I stood there, unmovable, unshaken. There was no explosion, no violent confrontation. She collapsed in on herself, unable to hold the pieces together anymore. The woman who had controlled me, who thought she was untouchable, was shattered. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I simply walked away. The silence in the house was deafening, but it was mine now. The control, the power was mine. The next morning, I sat in the living room, the sunlight spilling across the floor. She was gone. Her bags, her things, everything was gone. There was no apology, no explanation. I hadn't expected one. I let the quiet settle in. I had done what needed to be done, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel remorse. I felt clarity. She had underestimated me, and now I was done.